The future of work. The future of work. What does that even mean? It sounds lately it seems like everywhere you look, someone is talking about the future of work. And if you're feeling this, if you're seeing articles about the future of work, what seems like every 5 minutes, just pop the word future in the chat box and let me know, because I feel like I am constantly seeing articles and blog posts and podcast episodes and just all of this conversation around the future of work. The future of work is remote. The future of work is hybrid. The future of work is flexible. Even a Google search will point you in a lot of different directions. This is what came up for me this morning when I typed in the future of work is. And look at those different options. The future of work is a 60-year career. Give me a yes or no if that sounds right for you. The future of work is a 60-year career. Interestingly enough, the future of work is your job safe. Okay, that's interesting. This one's cool. The future of work is through workforce ecosystems. Interesting. The future of work is not corporate. What do you think about that one? Is that a yes or a no for you? The future of work is not corporate. And then the last one on the list, the future of work is employee well-being. So that one's definitely food for thought. The future of work is employee well-being. So that's something that I can definitely get behind. And Tara agrees, that last one for sure. Autumn is like, oh, true. The future of work is employee well-being. I really, really like that. Oh, the future of work is 4 days. I can get behind that too. So it seems like everyone has a different take on what the future of work means. So here at Clockwise, one of our core values is actually curiosity. That's one of my favorite things about being a clockmate, a member of the Clockwise team, is that we're very curious. And so we took that curiosity and we decided to start asking questions. We wanted to go straight to the source and ask, the actual workers who are or who will be doing the work in the future of work. So we reached out to more than 1,000 knowledge workers from across the US from a variety of different industries. And I'd love to know, do you consider yourself a knowledge worker? If you do, put the word one, put the number 1 in the chat box and let me know. I'm pretty sure that we're all probably going to be considered knowledge workers here. Oh, that's a great question. So Autumn, a knowledge worker is defined as a worker whose primary, okay, let's see if I can remember the official wording. It's really someone whose primary, what you call it, like not commodity, but their work is using their brains. Their work is thinking. So it's people who work in marketing, it's engineers, it's really anyone who's not doing like manual labor or creating something. It's not like manufacturing where you're making something. It's attorneys and yeah. So it's that knowledge workers. A good way to put it is anybody who works behind a computer in any form of work. Maybe you're writing code. So that's really how we can think about knowledge workers. And so we reached out to more than 1,000 knowledge workers from across the US and from a variety of different industries. So we asked questions about workplace culture. We asked questions about how workplace culture impacts innovation, how it impacts whether someone will stay in their role or look for something new. We wanted to know, where do you do your best work? When are you happy? What makes you productive? And of course, we asked questions about how culture can affect the bottom line. So we felt by asking these questions that we could get a clear picture of what the future of work will really look like without trying to use a crystal ball and just taking a guess. And so after digging through all of the data and all of the numbers, we pulled out all of the best light bulb moments. And here's what we found. In a word, sustainable. The future of work is sustainable. At least it should be. that's what workers want, and it's what they need. And so we compiled all of our findings from all of the questions that we asked in this handy report, Happy and Productive, the real ROI of a sustainable workplace. You can grab it for free, and I'll actually share the link so you can go straight to it in the chat. And so this is exactly what we're going to be talking about today: how to create a sustainable work culture for ourselves and for our teams. We'll talk about what's holding us back and tangible ways to take action now. But first, let me properly introduce myself as your time management coach for the day, in case we haven't met yet. I know we've got a lot of familiar faces here, but in case we haven't met, my name is Anna Dearmon Kornick, and I am head of community here at Clockwise. I started my career as a congressional scheduler, managing one of the most hectic schedules in the country. So I saw that someone is here today from Washington, D.C. Yes, I spent some time in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, spending what felt like 10 to 12 hours a day, parked in front of an Outlook calendar, rearranging meetings for someone who somehow needed to be everywhere at once. And I mentioned that I'm coming to you from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm originally from Louisiana. And we talked about where you guys are joining from today. Where are you originally from? Because I know that answer is not always the same. Where are you originally from? Let me know in the chat box. And so I am originally from Louisiana, and I started to miss home. I missed that good Louisiana food like gumbo and crawfish etouffee and boiled crawfish and shrimp creole and all that good stuff that you just can't get in DC. And so I moved home and I started a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communications and government affairs. Every day was a crisis to be managed and chaos to be put into order. As you can imagine, that kind of lifestyle is incredibly 24/7. And I basically got a one-way ticket to burnout town. And after one too many days of just having my boundaries completely railroaded, my health was not in a good place. My relationships weren't in a good place. It was every sense of the word burnout. I walked away from that crazy life in search of something different and in search of something better. So I became a time management coach. And now every day I get to help busy professionals just like you stop feeling overwhelmed and start spending time on what matters most. And that overwhelm is really on the opposite end of the sustainable work culture that we'll be diving into today. So I'd love to know, before we officially kick it off, have you ever felt that burnout and that overwhelm that comes from being in an unsustainable work culture? Put the word burnout in the chat and let me know if you felt it. Because when you know how bad it can be, when you know what that bad place can feel like, sometimes it can feel hopeless to imagine that there is another way, that there can be something like a sustainable work culture. But it is possible. It can happen, and we're going to talk about how to create that for ourselves and our teams today. So we're going to start with some bad news and some good news. And then we'll jump into the 3 ingredients of a sustainable work culture. And then finally, I'll share specific ways that you can up your sustainability factor starting today. Okay, bad news, good news. Where should we start? Should we start with the bad news or should we start with the good news? You let me know. We can start with bad news. We can start with good news. Okay, bad news first. So, okay, Autumn says, Annalisa says bad news first. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to lead with some good news because I want to kick this off on a positive note. We'll start with some good news. First, the good news is that the key to a profitable and a productive company is a sustainable work culture. So this probably seems like a no-brainer, right? It seems like at face value, well, of course, a sustainable work culture is going to be a better work culture. But until we asked the questions, until we looked at the numbers, we just didn't know for sure how productivity and profitability actually connected with a sustainable work culture. But the truth is that It does. It absolutely connects. And you can find a little bit more of those details inside the report that we put together. But we'll stop right here and we'll just say, okay, the good news is that the key really is a sustainable work culture. So we found that 71% of workers, 71%, that's a huge amount of workers at sustainable work culture, at sustainable workplaces, feel that their workplace culture improves how engaged they feel with their work. Okay, so let's think about this. 71% of workers at sustainable workplaces feel that their culture is directly responsible for improving how engaged they feel at work. And we know that engaged workers are happy workers, are productive workers, are workers that stay. And that's what we want, right? We want our good people to stay. But here's the bad news. All right, I've got to come in with the bad news now. The bad news is that there is a noticeable leadership gap when it comes to sustainability. Now, I don't want to pick on my managers, but I do want to know, are any of you who are with me today managers? Do you manage a team? And if you do, put the word manager in the chat box, because this is something that it's incredibly important for us to have awareness on. Okay, so we definitely have managers with us today. So I really want you to perk your ears up and pay special attention to this. So there's a noticeable leadership gap when it comes to sustainability. What we found is that work is more sustainable at the top. People who are in managerial roles, people who are in leadership roles, find that describe their workplaces, describe their work as being more sustainable as compared to only 22% of individual contributors. So individual contributors, I'll call them ICs a bunch for the rest of this presentation. An individual contributor is essentially someone who doesn't manage anyone else. So I don't manage a team. So I am considered an individual contributor. I'm an IC myself. And so what we found is that managers above and beyond felt that their workplace was sustainable, whereas only 22% of ICs describe their workplace as sustainable. You know what? I think that's supposed to be unsustainable. Don't you love when that happens? Only 5% of managers describe their workplace as unsustainable. That makes more sense. So basically what we're taking away from this is that managers very often feel that their workplace feels sustainable. So that must mean that their team members feel the same way, right? But that's not necessarily the case. So let me restate that. What we found is that managers very often felt that their workplace is sustainable, despite the fact that their individual contributor did not feel that way. And so what this means is that as a manager, your comfort level might be clouding your judgment. Your comfort level, the way that you feel about work, your perception could be clouding your judgment when it comes to making decisions that help create a more sustainable work culture for your team. So there are a number of different reasons or a number of different possibilities that make this occur. It could result in a lack of awareness. A manager may believe that everything's fine for me, so everything must be fine for my team as well. It could be a lack of empathy. It could also be a result of poor communication. And maybe you don't realize that your team doesn't feel as sustainable because the open lines of communication and feedback aren't there. And so it's very interesting that this leadership gap could be affecting and slowing down workplace culture innovations that then are going to have a ripple effect in terms of a company or a team's overall long-term health. And so here's a little bit more bad news. Oh, I hate to add more bad news, but we also found that when it comes to sustainability, there's also a significant gender gap. So we found by asking questions that women are more than twice as likely as men to feel that their work culture is very unsustainable. That's rough. We found that women are more than twice as likely as men to feel that their work culture is very unsustainable. And interestingly enough, women without children are experiencing this even more than mothers or parents in general. So it's incredibly interesting to see that, not only are women more likely to feel that their work culture is unsustainable, but women without children feel this the hardest. Out of curiosity, you can just let me know with a yes or a no. Have you ever experienced this or seen this across your team? Women without children. I know, Rashid, isn't that interesting? I think that a lot of times we would assume that women with children would experience this feeling of unsustainability the most, but our data shows that women without children are experiencing this even more than mothers. There are a lot of different reasons, there are a lot of different things that could point to this finding. Some examples could be that sometimes women without children are sometimes earlier in their careers and are in roles that don't necessarily have as much autonomy. But either way, it's fascinating to know. And so I hope that, as managers who are joining me today, that you're seeing this and that it's beginning to get your wheels turning about how you can create opportunities to take in more feedback from your team in order to close that leadership gap if it exists, and to pay attention to the ways that you can support the women on your team in order to close that gender gap. And Autumn says, yes, it seems like women take on the burden of others' feelings and opinions more than the men on our team. And I think that's a really fantastic observation. And you can really begin to, now that we have a heightened awareness of this, this is something that we can tune into. And this is exactly why I want to share a little bit more good news. So we're what is this, a sandwich here, a good news, bad news sandwich. We started with some good news, then I gave you the bad news, but here's the good news that we're going to end this piece with, is that now we know that there is a significant leadership gap. There is a gap in the way that those in managerial roles and individual contributor roles experience sustainability, which means that we're now able to bring more awareness as managers to the way that we listen to and communicate with our team. And second, now that we know that there is a significant gap in the way that genders experience sustainability, this gives us an entirely new perspective and a new set of things to begin paying attention to. So now that we know, what can we do about it? Well, this is where the 3 ingredients for a sustainable work culture come to play. This is where we can take what we've learned about what makes a sustainable culture and begin diving into it and taking action on it. So the 3 ingredients for a sustainable work culture include workload, rewards, and opportunity. Workload, rewards, and opportunity. So let's dive into these one by one. We'll start with workload. So basically, we've found that a well-rested team with a healthy work-life balance is happier, more productive, and more profitable. And this isn't just saying we think. This is what the numbers show. The numbers show that a well-rested team with a healthy work-life balance, so that means a manageable workload, is happier, more productive, and even more profitable. When a team member has clear expectations around workload, that same team member is more likely to be engaged and less likely to burn out. The old way of working, longer work hours, less time off, and 24/7 availability, while it might seem profitable in the short term to work around the clock, And the long-term 24/7 cultures inevitably lead to lower quality work, disengagement, and eventually burnout. I've been there. And so workload is one of the three ingredients for a sustainable work culture that we can watch out for. Next is rewards. Team members whose managers praise them for their hard work and accomplishments and take a proactive approach to their report's career progression are more engaged, they're more productive, and they're less likely to quit. I mean, that sounds amazing. Praise for their work and their accomplishments, a proactive approach to their report's career progression. That's how you cultivate a team that is engaged, productive, and wants to stay. But the bummer, the big disappointment is that most managers miss the mark. Of those we spoke with, only 1 out of 3 employees we surveyed said that they had been recognized in the past week. So I want to ask you, have you been recognized by your manager or by your company in the past week? Take a second if you have, put reward in the chat box and let me know. But I would love to know, have you been recognized for your work in the last week? And then if you haven't been recognized for your work, if you are a manager, I would love to know if you've recognized your team, and put kudos in the chat box if you have recognized your team, someone on your team in the past week. Yeah, Autumn knows what's up. Autumn has felt that recognition in the past week, and she's given kudos to her team. She's recognized her team. I love that, Rashid. Kudos every day. Stacy's doing it too. We've clearly got some good managers here. Yeah, Tara says the same thing. But this breaks my heart. Only 1 out of 3 employees said that they'd been recognized in the past week. It's so simple. And there's something that we can do about it. And then finally, the third ingredient is opportunity. Let your team make decisions about their tools, their projects, and how they spend their time. So our survey found that feeling empowered to make strategic decisions was highly correlated with sustainable workplace cultures. So for a workplace to feel sustainable, for that sustainability to lead to being happy, productive, and profitable, we've got to go back to giving our teams a choice. We've got to go back to giving them the ability to make decisions. Plus, nearly burnout-proof teams have managers who position every member to spend most of their time playing to their strengths. So if you're a manager who is always on the lookout for opportunities to align your team members with the type of work that they do best, the work that's in their genius zone, then you're on your way to creating a team that is just about burnout proof. So how can we take these 3 ingredients and up our sustainability factor? How can we make the future of work the present? So let's start with workload. And this is where you're definitely going to want to take some notes, because this is where I'll be sharing some very actionable ways that you can begin to start making the future of work now. So I've got a set of tips for managers. And then if there are any ICs that have joined me today, I've got some for you as well. But we'll start with our managers. So on the workload side, I would highly encourage you to kick off your team meetings or even your one-on-one meetings with a temperature check, asking your team, red, yellow, green, how are you feeling this week? Because when you do this, you're able to get a great quick survey of your team and understand how they're feeling with regard to their workload and work-life balance. This increases your awareness and helps close that perception gap because you're creating a safe place for employees to give feedback. You can also make sure that your team is getting enough focus time. When your team has focus time and the ability to put their head down and get that uninterrupted work done, that means they're able to actually get their work done during the day instead of having to stay late or stay up late to get it done. And then finally, one thing that you can do is to set clear expectations about response times. So And also making sure that those response times are realistic. Yeah, I actually had a manager several years ago who did clearly set expectations about response times. In fact, he told me that if I did not respond to his emails within 5 minutes with at least the word okay, that I would be getting a phone call. And if I got the phone call, I better answer it on by the second ring. And while those were very clear expectations, they definitely were not the healthiest expectations. So I would encourage you to set very clear and realistic expectations with your team about response times, and communicate those. If you need to reach out to one of your team members on Slack in the evening, do you need them to respond right then, or can it wait till the next day? If you send a team member an email, do you require an immediate response like my boss did in the past, or is it okay for them to get back to you within a few hours? Whenever you're clear about what that expectation really is, it goes a long way in reducing the stress levels for your team, because they clearly understand what to do and how to communicate. If you're an independent contributor, the tips are a little bit different here, because we're thinking about yourself, and we're thinking about how you can show up in relation to your team members and even support your manager along the way. So if you're an IC, I would encourage you to do an audit of all of your existing or new projects. And you know what? If you're a manager, you should probably do this too, because when you have visibility of all of the current projects that are in motion that you're working on, it can really give you a clear picture of what exactly is taking up all of the space on your plate. A lot of times overwhelm stems from not working too many hours, but on splitting those hours between too many different projects. And when you're working on 15 different projects in the span of a week, and you're only making about this much progress on each one, it can feel very defeating, because the progress you're making isn't substantial enough for you to feel like you're getting a win, like you're moving forward. And so you can always feel like you're always feeling like you're in that hamster wheel of always working but not making substantial progress. But when you have that snapshot, that clear picture of where your time is going across all of the different projects, it can create awareness and be a conversation starter with your boss or your team about priorities. Second, I would encourage you, if you're an IC, to implement your own personal office hours. So what do I mean by this? A lot of us, when we're working from home, or even if we're reporting to an office or working with a hybrid, in a hybrid environment, it can be really easy, if we have a lot of work to do, to just keep working into the evening. Like I said, to stay late or to stay up late. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted. And so if you tell yourself, okay, I am going to stop working every day at 6 p.m., and you hold yourself to that, it can keep you from allowing that work to creep past your deadline and into the evening, where it then begins to overlap with your personal time or your family time. And so work expands to fill the time allotted. Create those start and stop boundaries for yourself. And then finally, once you've done that audit of your projects, and you've implemented your own personal office hours, your boundaries for the day. And I love it, Autumn. Yeah, boundaries as self-care 2022. Clearly communicate with your manager. Let your manager know what you're working on. If you don't have a one-on-one set up with your manager, ask if that's something that you can do, so that you can have clear communication with your manager. Because if your manager isn't providing that space, that method for you to communicate your workload, and you find that it's affecting your well-being, I encourage you to take the initiative and see how you can create that line of communication. And if you can see yourself implementing any of these tips, put the word workload in the chat box and let me know. And then we'll move on to reward. So a lot of times when we think of reward, we think about raises and promotions, but it can be a little bit more than that. So managers, I would encourage you to kick off your staff meetings. Oh, I love it. All caps. Thank you. Managers, I would encourage you to kick off your staff meetings by celebrating wins. Kick off your staff meetings by either compiling in advance a list of all of the great things that your team members have done in the past week, or inviting them to share at least one win from the past week. Excuse me. And Autumn says that she does this and everyone loves it. It's such a great energizing way to kick off a team meeting. And, I always say that in the span of 168 hours, in the span of a week, you have to have at least one win, no matter how small it is. And so encourage your team to share those wins and to celebrate them. This kind of goes hand in hand with celebrating wins, but start a team kudos or shout out tradition. This is one of my favorite things about working at Clockwise is that, every single week at the end of the week, we're encouraged to submit shout outs for the week where we thank our team members for the great work that they've done, the way that they either went the extra mile or they just went the mile and it helped you out in a big way. So whatever that might look like for your team, if you create a forum or create a place for team members to thank each other and congratulate each other, that's just another way, another free way that you can add more reward to the mix. And then finally, the traditional ways that we think of when it comes to reward are advocating for raises, promotions, and awards for your team. And raises and promotions are obvious, but awards are something interesting because, it can be such an interesting way to celebrate your team members or the work that your team has done by nominating them for an industry award. And so I would encourage you to look for opportunities to see what awards exist that you could nominate your team for. Oh, Autumn, great tip, a success channel in Slack where we can post wins as they happen. And it's really nice to see throughout the day. I love that. And every time a win is posted, I know that just makes everyone just feel just energized and excited. And so here are some tips for individual contributors. Tell your manager, if you think your manager is doing a great job, let them know. Let them know that you are grateful for the work that they do. That could go so far in building them up as well. Thank your team members. If there's not a formal success channel like Autumn's company has, or there's not a kudos method in place, go out of your way to thank a team member or a collaborator for their help and for their good work. And then finally, seek out award opportunities. Just like I mentioned for managers, if you do some research and you find that there's a statewide marketing association award show, maybe you see that one of your team members would be a perfect fit for one of those awards, or that a project you worked on. There's nothing that says that you can't nominate a project that you've done as well. And seeking out that recognition. It's not about being self-promotional. It's about finding that way to fill your professional cup, as you could say, and an opportunity to elevate others on your team. So if you could see yourself implementing any of these, put the word reward in the chat box and let me know. And we'll move on to opportunity. So a lot of times when I think about opportunity, I also think about autonomy. But let's dive into these tips. So for managers, the first thing that comes to mind is involve your team in selecting new tools or methods, you could say. So let's say that you're looking for a new customer management system, or you're looking for a new communication tool, or a new live broadcasting tool, or a new project management system. Instead of choosing it and just issuing a directive, instead of just choosing it and giving it to your team, find ways to involve your team in selecting new tools so that they have the opportunity to have a say in what they're going to be using from day to day. Also, I would highly encourage you to learn about your team's strengths and their genius zone activities. And out of the managers who are with me today, put the word strength in the chat box if you have spent time exploring your team's strengths and genius zone activities. Because when you know what your team is truly good at, when you know what each member of your team is truly, where they excel, what they enjoy doing, and what's in their genius zone, you're able to then align their strengths with future projects. It brings a whole new level of strategy to the way that you assign work to your team. And then finally, and give your team options rather than directives. Okay, so this is a little bit of a toddler parenting tip, but let's be honest, we're all just grown up toddlers, right? A lot of times with my 3-year-old who is very strong willed and is learning and wanting to be independent and make her own decisions, I'll ask her, hey, would you like to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? And giving her a choice allows her to have a role in the decision making. And we can do the same thing with our team members. Instead of just saying, hey, you're going to wear the blue shirt, you can ask them a question. Hey, would you like to use Trello or would you like to use Asana? And that way you're giving them a choice. You're giving them an opportunity. Would you like to have this deadline or that deadline? Right, Autumn, as long as they don't get decision fatigue. So we'll make sure that this is where you can make sure that they've got some good habits and some routines in place, right? So find opportunities to give your team options rather than just directives, because at the end of the day, we're all just grown-up toddlers and we want to have some independence in the matter. And then if you are an independent, contributor, individual contributor, I would encourage you to learn your strengths and learn that what activities are in your genius zone. What are those things that set your soul on fire? What do you love about your work and what would you like to do more of? What are you naturally good at, or what are the skills that you've cultivated? Because until you can articulate what you do best, you can't effectively advocate for yourself to your manager to do more work that is in your genius zone. So you have to start by getting that awareness, by being able to articulate what your strengths are so you can ask for those projects and talk with your manager. That's the second tip, to talk with your manager about projects that align. And then finally, take the initiative. If you recognize that there's a gap, if there is a new tool or a method that you think would be helpful for your team, I encourage you to bring that up, to find ways to share your suggestions. And so, whether you're a manager or you're an IC, let me know. Do you see yourself incorporating or taking action on any of these action tips for creating opportunity in a more sustainable workplace? So today we've talked about the bad news. We've talked about the good news. We've talked about how a sustainable workplace is the future of work, but we're working with a leadership gap and a gender gap. But the good news is that now we know, so we can do something about it. We've talked about the 3 ingredients of a sustainable work culture being workload, reward, and opportunity. And we've talked about some really tangible ways that you can take action to up your sustainability factor, either for your team or for yourself. And now I would love to know, what questions do you have about what we've talked about so far today, or anything time management or productivity related in general? This is your space. Ask the questions. And if you have a question in mind and you're hesitant to ask, just keep in mind that someone else probably has the same exact question. And sometimes the best way that we can learn is by learning together. So I'm here to stick around and answer any questions that you have. Again, whether they're about productivity in general or about your team, or I would be happy to talk a little bit more about the sustainability report that we put together. But while you're thinking of questions, I'm going to go ahead and share your action items for today. And so that first action item is to grab your copy of Happy and Productive, the real ROI of a sustainable work culture. That's really going to allow you to take a deeper dive into all of the different pieces of today's conversation about those 3 ingredients, about that leadership gap and about that gender gap, and that has those actionable takeaways for you to start creating that sustainable work culture for your team today. Okay, so I have a question from Autumn, which is, I know Clockwise and Asana have a very tight partnership. Is the team at Clockwise familiar with ClickUp? And if so, what are the thoughts? Are there any integrations or tools from Clockwise for ClickUp like there are for Asana? Oh, Autumn, I love this. I'm going to make a note of this and share this with our product team. As of right now, we don't have an integration with ClickUp. Me personally, not speaking for Clockwise as a whole, but me personally, I actually just started using ClickUp with a program that I'm a part of. I'm doing like an educational program, and the educator uses ClickUp to create a dashboard and to coordinate all of our learning modules. And it's a really cool cool tool. And so, but I will definitely pass this along. That's something that you would be interested in seeing. And out of curiosity, what kind of integration, like what would be interesting for you to see with Asana and ClickUp? And Tara's question, while Autumn's letting me know what she would be interested in seeing with Clockwise and ClickUp, for celebrating wins at the beginning of a meeting, how do you inspire your team to participate? We do this, but then we'll sit in silence. Okay, I think that's okay. Great question. So I think one thing that could be good, Tara, to know, so as a time management coach, I'm going to go off on a very short tangent, but as a time management coach, I believe that productivity is very personal to you. It's very personality based. And one of the things that I love to do with my time management coaching clients and my team members is to really understand what their working style is and what their preferences are in terms of, do they prefer introversion or do they prefer extroversion? And so, Tara, it could be that some of the members of your team have a tendency toward introversion. And so it's possible that the members of your team don't feel as comfortable verbally sharing their wins. And so perhaps one thing that you could test drive is having them submit wins, maybe in a Slack channel ahead of the meeting, and then you could read them out or share them at the beginning of the meeting. That way it takes the pressure off of your team to speak up in the moment, because, so many of us were taught from an early age, me included, that anytime that you share a win, it looks like bragging. It looks like you're trying to toot your own horn. And it looks like you need attention. And, a lot of us were told, no, don't brag on yourself. Don't talk like that. And I think that's something that a lot of us kind of carry into adulthood. And so the two things that are kind of at play here is a preference for introversion, as well as sort of a deep-seated tendency to not toot your own horn. And I think that one thing that you could test drive and see if your team is comfortable sharing those wins in writing, or sharing a win for someone else on the team, because it's a lot easier to brag on someone else than it is to brag on yourself. So you could almost turn it into a compliment circle in a way, because it would achieve the same purpose as creating an environment of reward. But instead of having to speak up and share their own win, I could share a win about you, and you could share a win about Autumn, and Autumn could share something awesome that Stacy has done, and it could work like that. What do you think about that? Because it seems like that could help with the crickets whenever it's about cheering someone else on instead of cheering yourself on. I would be up for that. That would be fun. Yeah. Okay. Autumn says that's what my team does. We cheer others on. I think that's great. That actually makes a lot of sense. We're a team of introverts. Thanks for these ideas. I got you. Yeah. I think that's so important to note, because if that's what the crickets, if you've got crickets, whenever you ask, you can just find a new way to ask the question that the team's going to be most comfortable with. Okay, so then Autumn says, my team is thinking of switching. Gotta know Clockwise's thoughts. Love that. I'll see what I can find out and get back with you. Not sure yet for integrations. Team is in the exploratory phase. Definitely something similar to what Clockwise has for Asana. Okay, it's great to just kind of keep everything all in one place. Okay, does time tracking all work tasks for manage, review, promote sustainable work manager? Okay, just tracking all work tasks for manage. Okay, so this is a really good question. about time tracking. So I don't I don't exactly have the numbers to back this up. So so I'm just going to speak sort of anecdotally because we didn't ask about time tracking and its correlation or connection with sustainability in our study. But as someone who has had to track my time in 15-minute increments, that personally felt like the opposite of opportunity for me. That felt like the opposite of autonomy, and it felt like having to. It felt like being micromanaged in a way, although someone wasn't telling me how to spend each of my, and again, speaking just for me, although someone wasn't telling me um, how to spend my time, the fact that I knew that I had to account for every single 15-minute increment. Yes, Autumn, every 15 minutes, I started thinking of, I knew that there was a problem when I looked at a pile of laundry. I was like, okay, I think I can get through this laundry in 0.25 because everything was like, okay, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. I think I can wash the dishes in 0.25. Or, this TV show, it's only 0.5. I know I'm not a robot, but it sort of trains you that way. But I will tell you this, Mohammed, when it comes to time tracking, I find that it creates such great awareness. And I would actually encourage, I do encourage team members or anyone that I have supervised in the past to track their time for their own awareness and visibility, because we tend to have a disjointed is not the right word, but we tend to inflate, I think, our perception of how we're spending our time. So many times we think, oh, I must have worked like 60 hours last week. But if you actually track your time, you're maybe working 38, because the perception is so much different. And so I think that having an awareness of how you are spending your time as a result of time tracking for personal use is fantastic for creating a sustainable work culture, because it shows you it's like tracking your spending. When you track your spending, you have a clearer idea of where your money's going. When you track your time, you have a clearer idea of where your time is going. But when that's under the lens of a manager scrutinizing every 0.5, it can really cause some stress. And let's see. Focusing on time won't ever create. Yeah, productivity is so much more important than time. I do agree with that. So, I would be interested to know your take on that, how that works for your team and having them time track their work tasks. And then, okay, Rashid says, in the past, we needed someone to open the company or the factory to start working at 8. Today, my factory is my laptop. Yeah, I can work anytime, anywhere, and that makes time tracking in the digital age irrelevant. Absolutely. The time cards and punching in and out is not, that's just not life now. And so we've got to create new ways of thinking and new ways of doing to reflect what life looks like now. But I do love some time tracking. I'll actually tell you, my first full month, at least, maybe my first 2 full months at Clockwise, I tracked all my time because I wanted to understand how much time my new tasks were taking me. I wanted to understand how much time does it take me to prep for an office hours? How much time does it take me to set up a Zoom registration? How much time does it take me to create graphics and do all of that prep work? Because having that awareness for myself, not for my boss, but having that awareness helps me plan better in the future. So, do you have any more questions? We've got about 5 minutes left. And I also want to make sure that I share one more time that you can grab the full report, Happy and Productive, the Real ROI of a Sustainable Work Culture, that can really help you dive in deeper to all of the topics that we covered today. And it gives you insights into, the research and some of the questions that we asked. And just really what we found in that research. And so in addition to grabbing your copy of Happy and Productive, I encourage you to take action on at least one thing you learned today, whether it was something pertaining to workload, rewards, or opportunity. And then finally, I encourage you to register for the next Clockwise office hours. Do you want to know what it's about? Because I would love to tell you. Autumn's already registered. I love it. So, what's in your genius zone? You know, the type of work that sets your soul on fire. You're good at it and you love doing it. That's your genius zone. How much time do you spend working in your genius zone? If the answer is not enough, or you're not even sure what even belongs in your genius zone, then you're going to want to join me for the next Clockwise office hours. So you can grab your seat at getclockwise.com/office hours. I can drop that in the chat right now, but I know that whenever we make our way today, that you should land on a website that will give you the opportunity to register. I'm really excited about this one. I'm excited about all of these office hours, let me be honest, because I have so much fun talking with you in the chat, talking time management, talking productivity. Yes, autofill, love it. Love an opportunity to automate. But this conversation is so good about knowing what's in your genius zone, because in addition to knowing what's in your genius zone, knowing what is in your distraction zone, your disinterest zone, your drudgery zone, and your development zone can really help you refine the work that you're doing and identify opportunities to automate, delegate, and eliminate. And in the process, empower your team members through delegation. So like I said, super pumped. Make sure you register for that so we can all figure out what's in our genius zone so we can do our best work. All right, I'm here if you have any additional questions before we wrap up. It is 1:58 my time. So, oh, yay, Autumn, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that. I really appreciate it. I always love seeing familiar faces in the chat box and seeing that you guys are coming back time and time again. Next time, we'll talk about what's in your genius zone. I encourage you to bring a friend, share office hours with someone who you think might also benefit from knowing what's in their genius zone, and let's do this together. So I hope that, oh, and Stacy, I love that. Immediate action, making a success Slack channel. That's great. Really get those rewards flowing and start making that workplace more sustainable. All right. I will see you in not 2 weeks, but I will see you on April 6th. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.